Greetings. Welcome. Sharp squares and newbies, which we explained to you last week on the sports betting show on the Parleh. And it's Jorey Middlestadt. That's me. He's the pro, Harley Redlick. Good morning, sir.
Hey, Jorey.
It's a snowy Friday morning here in Southern Ontario. Hope you're traveling safe if you're out there, and you won't be listening to us at the moment, but this should probably go on all day. So we'll just pass that along. Reminder that we're here with you each and every week on Canada's Sports Betting Network, the Parleh. And we always want to hear from you. We'd like to get a little more feedback, folks. You can email us questions, comments, picks, whatever you'd like, to questions@theparleh.com. You can hit either of us up on Twitter. I'm at Jorey Middle. He's at Sharp Edge Picks. And hey, if we like what you have to say, and even if we don't like it, if it's compelling, we'll use it on next week's show. So first up, as we like to do, we'll tell you what's going to happen on the program today. We're going to take another look at NBA betting. I know we looked at the NBA at the All-Star break and some futures value last week. Well, now the games are back. Starting last night, Harley gave out a winner yesterday on the Parleh, which we'll get to in just a moment. Our betting concept of the week is a teaser, which a lot of people associate primarily with football betting, but my understanding is it's become a lot more popular in leagues like the NBA. So we'll talk about teasers. We'll take a look at the Honda Classic as the golf season is well underway, and it's the first stop in the Florida swing, the Honda Classic. Excuse me. March Madness is around the corner, so we're going to do our first foray into talking about college hoops south of the border, and we will have our gambling story of the week, which may actually be more than one. But first, want to touch upon something that's really important. We talk about it each and every week on the podcast. If we don't for some reason, well, you can chastise us for that. And what I'm referring to is always checking lines and line movements. And I bring that up because yesterday on the Parleh, one of Harley's video was an NBA game that took place last night, the Pistons and the Cavs. The Pistons were a pretty big underdog. You liked them for a number of reasons, which you explained on the video. And when you posted the video, I believe the line was the Cavs minus 8.5. Am I right?
I bet them and gave them out as a tip at Pistons plus 8.5. The line actually went up, and so I got not even the best line. It went as high as 9. And then Darius Garland was announced, the Cavs star, that he's not playing. The line dropped to somewhere between 5 and 6. And again, you're locked into your bet when you make your bet, or in the case of the Parleh, you're locked into your pick when you do the video. It then, as you can imagine, goes into editing for all their fancy, amazing graphics, and then the video gets released. And the video is the video at that time. Always check the lines. In this case, I was fortunate. I got an extra 2-3 points. It didn't really matter. The Pistons actually won the game outright.
Yeah.
But always check the lines, bet the updated lines. If something changes significantly from the time we release a video or we're doing the podcast, like you said, Friday morning, I'm going to give a bet for a college basketball game that's being played at 9 p.m. tonight. That's in 12 hours from now. If the betting lines or injuries move the lines, information changes things, you get your new line, evaluate your decision in real time.
Yeah, and that's what's important. If the perfect example, right? Somebody watches the video early in the day on that particular game, they go to bet it, they see the line is now 5.5. Take that into consideration. In other words, you have to ask yourself, right? Did I miss the best line? Is it still the right play? And maybe maybe you're a fairly knowledgeable NBA fan and you know that Garland is important to the team and say, you know what? I still like it because he's out and the line reflects that there's still value there, right? But you have to evaluate it for yourself and make your own decision when a line moves like that, especially an NBA line, right? A 3.5 point move is pretty significant.
Anything more than a point is not just betting action. It's a significant injury or absence of a player.
All right. So I want to just get to something. We talked about who we are and our credentials and all that kind of stuff in the first podcast we did. This is episode number 7, I should point out, of the Parleh Sports Betting Show. And something came up in doing some research yesterday, mostly yesterday, and actually I should going back to Wednesday, in just looking at the outright the futures to win the Honda Classic, this week's stop on the PGA Tour. And it got me to thinking, and I will talk about that a little later when I give a couple picks on the Honda Classic. But it got me to thinking, I wanted to just spend a couple more minutes here talking about the difference between a casual bettor like myself and a professional like you, Harley. And what I mean by that is, golf is one of those sports where analytics have completely changed the way you can look at betting this sport. And what I'm referring to is the multitude, and I mean, and that's probably not even the right adjective, of numbers that are available to fans and to bettors. And if you go looking for those who write up, who are regular golf bettors, or, one of the big sites like an ESPN, and there's tons of them, because golf is a heavily bet sport, especially in Europe. It's becoming more and more popular here in North America. And I mean, the breakdown of numbers and the numbers that some of these guys making picks or their bettors themselves, the access to numbers and how they employ them in making their bets is astounding. And so I'm not the guy who's going to spend hours and hours combing through numbers to try and find that edge when I want to bet on a golf tournament. I'm not going to do it. Will I spend 20, 30 minutes looking at some things? Absolutely. But I mean, to really drill down, because of the information available, it could be hours and hours. And so I think there's a real distinct difference between, again, a casual bettor like myself and a pro like you. And so along those lines, like, how much time in a day will you spend researching the plays you want to make that day?
I'm a macro level bettor, meaning I look at overall data and come up with overall strategies. And then on a day-to-day basis, I analyze games that fit best with those overall strategies. So we're going to get into one soon with NBA first half underdog money lines and why I like those bets. But what usually happens is I'll have a theory. For example, I really like betting baseball unders and home teams because of the correlation, and there's no bottom of the ninth, and the strategy entailed in a close game, and how by the 6th or 7th inning, especially in the National League, the home team's really just playing for one run with bunting, which leads to the unders, which correlates well with the home team. So I'll have a general theory like that, and I'll spend hours and hours and hours sifting through data of closing money lines and closing over-unders and home dogs and home favorites, and when the over-under is 7.5 versus 8.5. And as you can imagine, when the over-under 7.5, it leads more conducively to this in one-run games, because at under 8.5, if the final score is 8, it's not a one-run game. It doesn't work out as well. So I'll spend hours and hours and hours and hours overall evaluating a league and a strategy. Once I find something that works for me, I don't spend hours analyzing the games. I mean, it's almost become second nature. I can see the games that I like that fall into that niche, looking at the lines or tracking the lines. But I can look at, if you were with me in Vegas on a baseball day and said, look up at the board and identify the games you like, now it becomes almost second nature that I can find the games that fall into the wheelhouse based on the theories I have. That's my approach. Having said that, there are professional bettors out there, especially the ones that emphasize the player props, who are analyzing matchups, who have models where they're looking at games. So the Raptors are playing Charlotte tonight. When they're analyzing Van Vliet, they got a good feel of where Van Vliet scores his points, how he scores his points, how Charlotte plays defense. If they come up close to the three-point shooters and Van Vliet doesn't get a lot of points driving, Van Vliet's under on his props is good. If Charlotte's strategy, generally speaking, is conducive to Van Vliet taking a lot of open threes, or they're willing to give him the threes, again, betting over Van Vliet works. Those types of bettors fit that type of niche. Any professional bettor better figure out what they do well, what they don't do well, and just hone their skills on to what specific area. We covered this at the beginning of the show. The only edge you have, the house takes a lot of juice. If you're a professional bettor, you're going to get cut off and struggle to get payment. The one edge you have on the house is the house has to spread every game, lots of exotic bets, lots of different sports. You can carve out your little niche and just hammer your little niche.
Right. But don't feel bad if, like, it doesn't bother me that I'm not going to spend that time. I don't have that time. I'm not a professional bettor, right? Spend the time wisely if you're going to. Otherwise, bet really small amounts for pure entertainment, right? If you're going to bet more than maybe you're used to, then go spend some time, find some opinions, do your own research, right? But if not, bet small and look at it as pure entertainment. And I want to just keep hammering that point home. We've talked about bankroll management, and for the vast majority of people, especially for the newbies, right? Manage your money really smartly and look at it as pure entertainment and approach the way you bet and how much you bet that way. Agreed? We're in agreement?
100%. If you can find an edge, great. If not, sprinkle a couple dollars over as many sports as possible that you enjoy, or see if there's a sport where you feel you have a better knack or a better feel, or that you're passionate about and you enjoy. If you're somebody that likes to spend the summer outdoors running and playing tennis, but you hate the winter, find a winter sport. It doesn't matter if it's college basketball is a great one, or the NHL, and just try to hone in some skills on that specific sport. Bet that sport, see if you can turn it into a profitable hobby and spend the rest of the time doing other activities.
Yeah, I could blow your mind and in a podcast format, right? A non-visual format. I know that we have video, but we're not going to post all kinds of graphics every 2 seconds. The golf numbers are insane. How to the micro level now that you can look up statistics. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but not a whole lot when we get to the Honda Classic. But the NBA is back in terms of games being played. The All-Star game is obviously an exhibition game. Decent slate last night, a bigger slate tonight on Friday night. And you want to talk about what you called, this is what you called it to me, Harley's super halftime system when it comes to betting the NBA. So I don't know what it is. Please explain.
You can bet halftime bets in the NBA. And my favorite bet in the NBA is taking road underdogs plus good money.
Shocker, it's an underdog.
First half.
Sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
Road dogs in the first half.
Road dogs in the first half. Why do I like it? There's a pricing error. And the pricing error is a function of how NBA line makers set their lines. They set their lines for the game, and then they take derivative pricing to set a line for the first half. But the nature of NBA games is it's not two halves added together. And what I mean by that is the value of home court in the NBA comes up in the fourth quarter, not in the first half. In the first half of a game, when LeBron is playing at home, you don't see the ref making outrageous calls for LeBron. That happens in the fourth quarter. The reason the NBA has a win rate above 60% for home teams is because if a game is close in the fourth quarter, you can bet your ass that the home team, and especially the home stars, are going to get all the calls. But that doesn't go on in the first half. So in the first half of a game, if you get plus money or a dog in a close game, you're just taking the value. It's off. The betting lines are just off. So, for example, tonight, Oklahoma City is in Indiana, Dallas is in Utah, and the Pelicans are in Phoenix. In all three of those games, the favorite is between 6 and 9 points. That's the sweet spot for this bet. It means the home favorite is a better
6 to 9 point favorite for the game.
For the game.
Okay.
For the game. It means that the favorite is better and at home, but they're not way better. The favorites on the money line for the game are usually going to be about minus 300, and the dog is going to be about plus 250. But in the first half, you're usually going to get about 2-1 on the dog to win the half. So winning one of the 3 games grinds out at least a break even. Again, the home court advantage for this bet takes place in the fourth quarter, where the stars for Utah, like Mitchell, and the stars for Phoenix, like Booker, get the calls. They don't get the calls in the first half. Utah and Phoenix aren't looking to crush Dallas and the Pelicans. They're looking to cruise away with a victory. Maybe they run away with it late. Maybe in the first half they cruise and they're totally confident to have their backups play more. And if they're down 2-3 points at the half, they're not fussed. They're managing long term, and you're getting a big price on it because you're getting a large portion of the price that you shouldn't be getting because you're treating them as a road team when really the first half of an NBA game is a neutral site game.
So it's a money line play when you're playing the dog in the first half, not a point spread play.
I prefer it on the money line. The point spread would probably work out good also. I ran the numbers when I ran them as a money line play, and I've always bet it and liked it as a money line play. I'm attracted to the 2-1 odds long term. I find that if you're worried about getting cut off by a book, they're faster to cut you off when you win 57, 58% of your bets. All I need to do is win 37% of my bets at 2-1 odds. And if a book's evaluating my bets, 63% of these bets are still losers. So they get lost in the randomness shuffle.
I will only partially disagree on the way the game is called. The Stars get the calls all 48 minutes, or the benefit of the calls, if you will. But where I will agree is, especially in close games, and the crowd influences the refs. We've seen it a million times. There's the star factor and the crowd factor. Mm-hmm. And so sounds like very sound betting advice. I'm going to start looking at that as I've never been a big halftime better, first half, more second half, and more football. So I don't think I've ever made an NBA halftime bet, to be perfectly honest.
And I don't blame you. Why are you betting the first half of a game? It doesn't totally make sense. But it makes sense that in the NBA that gives you a lot of value for home court. If you don't have much home court, which you don't have in the first half, there's no reason for them to price in that first half home court.
So you mentioned 3 games that might fit the bill tonight. Are you actually playing anything on tonight's slate, either super halftime system or just a general play on the NBA tonight with a big slate of games?
Yeah, I would play all 3 of those. So Oak City, Dallas, and the Pelicans on the money line in the first half. You'd bet a little bit less on the Pelicans because they're a bigger dog. You win 1 out of 3 and you're grinding it out.
Any thoughts on the Raps at Charlotte as the Raps begin their post All-Star break schedule tonight? I want to say, I saw 2.5, and I don't have it up in front of me right now.
The Raps are a 2.5 point favorite tonight in Charlotte. Again, it's the respect they have for the Raptors. Charlotte's a decent team, somewhat in the running, and the fact that they keep on making the Raptors a favorite on the road speaks volumes, again, because the home teams are winning 60% of the time. So thinking that the Raptors are expected to win almost 60% of the time in Charlotte when 2 neutral teams, the home team's expected to win 60% of the time, is a ton of respect. I'm going to use the Raptors as the example when we touch upon teasers in a minute, but I got no real feel in that game.
All right. Had to ask because, they're the only NBA team in the country. And there's a lot of fans and a lot of people excited that the All-Star break is over and the Raps are back in action tonight. Our betting concept of the week, as I mentioned off the top, is the teaser. And when you and I spoke very briefly about this a couple days ago, I said to you, and at the time, I said, I really only associate teasers with football. And they've been around a long time, teasers, as a way to bet. So before I get into specifics, please explain to people what is a teaser.
So a teaser is a parlay bet but you are getting extra points with payouts closer to a single bet. So a well-priced teaser, and this is important because most of the time it's even going to be worse than this. You get an extra 5 points in the NBA game or over under, or an extra 6.5 points in an NFL game or over under, and you bet a 2-team teaser laying the standard bookie odds of minus 110. So the pro is you get extra points for the same price. The con is you need to win 2 games instead of 1 to get back the $100 on 110 wagered. Using the Raps game tonight as an example, they are a 2.5-point favorite and the over-under is 226. They're in Charlotte. A 5-point tease with the Raps would make them a 2.5-point dog, or you could make Charlotte a 7.5-point dog. Mm-hmm. And the over-under is either over 221 or under 231. So obviously you see there's a huge gap. If you're betting an extra, you get an extra 10 points one way or the other. It's under 231 versus over 221. So that's the way the teaser works. And then we can discuss
is 5 points the sort of the basic teaser number for the NBA? Because in the NFL it can vary, and back in the day it used to be 6 was sort of the baseline, right?
It's the same thing. I'm picking off pretty good lines. And even then, most teasers are below water, as we'll see in a second with the math. But this is the base. There are places that'll give you 4.5 point teasers. There's places where if they give you a 5-point teaser in the NBA, they're going to charge you minus 120. Mm-hmm. Let's start with, if you're not getting at least 5 points in the NBA and 6.5 in the NFL, and the 2-team teaser doesn't pay at least if you have to lay more than minus 110, it's a disaster. Run away, because you're even underwater, as we're going to see in most examples with these teasers. So anything worse than these teasers is just horrendous. And they'll come up with different teasers where they take a half point less and give you more juice, etc., to trick people. And it's a lot easier nowadays with technology than it was before. I mean, you can tease 2-3 points and just lay minus 140 or minus 150. As a general rule, teasing points is a ripoff.
Are you a believer? Do you ever do them?
I don't like it in the NBA. It doesn't work. To turn a profit on a 2-team teaser laying minus 110, you need to win each side 73% of the time. Or if you think there's some correlation, maybe 76 on the correlated side and 70 on the other side. It doesn't work in the NBA. It comes closest in a scenario like Charlotte, where you can cross what we're going to call key numbers, which are the numbers 4 to 8 in the NBA. A lot or a disproportionate number of NBA games land on the numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, given how fouling works in the NBA and when you keep on fouling and when you give up on fouling. So if you have a dog plus 3.5 and you get them plus 8.5, you're closest to it, especially if you can get a home dog with the value. So, for example, if you really want to bet a teaser, betting a team like Charlotte plus 7.5 as a home dog that crosses most of the numbers isn't bad. I wouldn't correlate it with an over-under. If you wanted to tease the Hornets plus 7.5, along with the Timberwolves, for example, plus 7.5, they're 2.5-point home dogs to the big-name Sixers. Home dogs tend to be well-priced anyways. You're getting an extra 5 points. It's not horrible. The only place I really like to bet teasers is with the NFL and football crossing over the 3 and the 7, right? Because they're the most popular numbers. They're actually called Wong teasers after a guy named Sanford Wong. A big shout out to Sanford. Here's his book. I can't get this on the screen.
There you go. Sharp Sports Betting. Now, yeah, if you can't see it, for those who can't see it and are just listening, right? Put it up again.
It's called Sharp Sports Betting by Stanford Wong. It's an important lesson. Always be learning. I read this book years ago, a 200-page book. I only got one takeaway out of the book, but that's more than worth the $30 and 3 hours when you're betting professionally, and that is the Wong teasers. bettors love these teasers. You cross the 3 and the 7. It's one of the few times where both casual bettors and pros are on the same page. Casual bettors love taking 7.5 and 8.5 point favorites in the NFL and teasing them down to 1.5 and 2.5. They figure they got a much better team and all they got to do is win. And the sharp books have even adjusted to this now, and they'll make an 8.5 point favorite. So we're talking a situation where, say, the Green Bay Packers and Rodgers are hosting the Detroit Lions, and they're an 8.5 point favorite, and everybody is teasing them down to 1.5, 2, 2.5, depending on the teaser you bet, figuring Green Bay's way better. They're at home to lowly Detroit, and they're for sure going to win. And the books have adjusted, and now they'll make Green Bay 9.5 plus 100 or plus 105. So you can't tease and cross the 3 because of the success of these Wong teasers.
Now, back in the day, I remember there was a time, and I know it's not NFL season, but I'll bring it back to the NBA, where you could tease the side and the total together.
Yes, you can.
On the same game. A lot of books won't let you do that.
A lot of books won't let you do that. If you remember back to the playoffs where I won by pure luck my Cincinnati covering the spread and under, where it looked at halftime like my chances of winning were like 100-1.
Right. That was a parlay, not a teaser, but yes.
That was a parlay. But games like that are a classic wheelhouse where you love to tease, where you take Cincinnati plus 13 or 14 points and you tease the total up so you get under 56, and you figure they correlate very well. Some books will let you do it. Some books won't let you do it. To take an extreme example where almost nobody will let you do it, is it happens in college sports when a team like Alabama is playing one of those teams that nobody's ever heard of. And they're
favored by 44. Yeah.
They're a 40-point favorite, and the over-under in the game is 50. I mean, that's where you can almost, the correlation can get to like 80, 90%, and you have to be a really foolish book to allow that correlated type parlay.
I've never tried. So just to wrap up this subject, because the NBA is happening right now, and so it's relevant. Will books allow you to tease side and total on the same game in the NBA?
They will, and they're right to do so, because it's really, really hard to determine in the NBA where sides and totals actually correlate well. And by that, I mean, if you took a dog plus 7.5 points instead of plus 2.5 points in an NBA game, what side does it correlate well to? Traditionally, we thought it correlates well with the under, with the premise that the closer the game, the lower scoring the game, the more valuable the points are. However, the way the NBA works with fouling at the end of games, close games tend to lead to more points, because if the Raptors are crushing Charlotte doesn't cover the 2.5 or 7.5 points, there's no fouling, and that leads to more of an under game. On the flip side, a close game could lead to more of an over. So the NBA, I don't see the correlation in the NBA the way I would see it in other sports where dogs and unders correlate well. And if you catch me on a good day, I like close games tend to go over, again, because of the fouling late in games.
Okay, so to wrap up our betting concept of the week, teasers. Clearly, the NFL is probably king for use. NBA might be second, and I guess you could say college basketball might be third. But are there other sports where you would employ teasers? Like I haven't seen. Like, you can't really do it in hockey.
I haven't seen them in other sports. I did hear of a story. I swear to you, this existed. I heard about a sports book in Vegas. This is 30, 40 years ago. I read this in a book that when the book first came out, they offered hockey betting, and they had teasers, but they had 6-goal teasers, like 6-point teasers in the NFL, because the guy just didn't know what he was doing. And he applied the teaser concept. And I mean, it lasted for a week, and one guy got to make a few $1,000, and that was the end of it. But no, I mean, they have alt lines, etc. I would tell you, or our listeners, College basketball teasers tend to be lower because they're lower scoring games. They only play 40 minutes instead of 48. If you can find teasers in college basketball that allow, usually college basketball teasers would be 4-point teasers, not 5-point teasers with the standard minus 110. If you can find college basketball teasers that have the exact same rules as NBA teasers, odds are you might be able to find some value in college basketball.
All right. Again, with the NFL now in our rear view mirror for a while, we're talking about betting on every sport. We did some tennis, even during NFL with the Australian Open, because the slams are so heavily bet. And along those lines, I don't know the exact numbers, but tennis is in Europe and in other parts of the world is one of the most heavily bet sports. It's crazy how much people bet on tennis. Similarly, golf falls into that category. And we'll certainly cover the majors, and we're talking about having some guests to come on and talk about golf betting. And so this week's the Honda Classic, as I mentioned earlier. It's the Florida swing, right? The PGA Tour, especially at the beginning of the year, right? They start in Hawaii, then they go to California or the West Coast, right? California, Arizona. And now they've flipped over to the Florida swing. And the Honda Classic traditionally has kicked off that swing. It's one of the most difficult golf courses on the PGA Tour, the stadium course at PGA National. And it's important, if you're not a big golf fan, one thing that you will learn if you want to spend a little bit of time researching it is what a lot of people will call horses for courses. And what I mean by that is players tend to take a liking and perform historically well at certain golf courses. It suits their eye, it suits their game, the type of grass. And I know there's people out there going, the type of fucking grass? Are you kidding me? Well, yeah. When you get to Florida, it's all Bermuda grass. The greens, the fairways now, they have some other. They're not always all Bermuda now as technology has changed things. But there are players who putt better on Bermuda grass greens. And I'm not making this shit up, Harley, because you look almost puzzled because I can see your face. But this is the kind of thing that matters if you're going to bet golf. And so when you're looking at a particular tournament and you're looking at the outright winners, which is what we're doing, we don't have time to get into matchups, and they're already on course, right? The round is underway in the second round today. You want to look at how a golfer has performed at this particular event and make sure it's at the same course, because traditionally the tournament is at the same course, but they do change the venue on occasion. They've been at PGA National now for several years, and the winning score is rarely in double figures below par at the Honda Classic. It's one of the toughest courses on tour, aside from the US Open and a couple others. And so for this week, I have 3 value picks, as we've talked about when we talked about betting the Australian Open to win the tournament. I'm not looking at the favorites, although in golf, a guy who's 4th, 5th on the leaderboard, there can be some good value. I will always say, because now the first round is done and the second round is underway, most of the players have not yet hit the course for the second round. But the 3 plays that I liked for today, and again, this is as of about an hour and a half ago, because the odds are consistently being updated and changing as the round goes on, is Tommy Fleetwood at plus 3,000 or 30-1. He finished the first round 5 back of the lead. This is a course that he has performed very well at. He's got, I think, 2 top 5s in his last 3 appearances at this tournament. He's generally plays well in Florida. And again, you have to take this into consideration. At 30-1, 5 back after the first round, and it'll be a tight leaderboard throughout unless somebody runs away. I think there's good value there. Alex Noren at 35-1 or plus 3,500, also 5 back. Very similar story for him. Plays well in Florida. Good ball striker. because one thing you'll see if you tune in to watch this tournament, Harley, there is a shitload of water. There's, I think, water on like 16 of the 18 holes. The 2 par 3s and the bear trap, 15 through 17. Golf fans know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the 3 holes they call the bear trap. They can swing this tournament in one swing of the club. You find the water, you can dash your hopes. Noren has traditionally navigated that stretch well. And like I said, another good Florida player. So at 35-1, I liked him. And then my long shot play, I got to give some Canadian love. And actually, there's a bunch of Canadians within 6 or 7 shots of the lead after the first round, including Taylor Pendrith and Adam Svensson, who a lot of people don't know, but they're now regulars on tour. But Mackenzie Hughes at plus 8,000 or 80-1, only 6 back of the lead. He's had up and down results on the Florida swing, but he's performed well at this tournament in the past. He's looking to sort of get things going for his season. He hasn't had great results yet. So at 80-1 and showing some Canadian love, that would be my third pick. I know you're not a big golf guy. You have anything to add or ask?
No, you're right. I'm not a golf guy. Again, good advice to all bettors. If you know the sport or you're passionate about it or you got an angle, great. If not, skip it. The only golf bets I've ever made in my life tend to be to fade Tiger Woods when he was all the hype because he was clearly overvalued. Maybe you can pick off another spot. What's that golden boy's name? Is it Johnson? Who's married to Gretzky's kid?
Oh, yeah, DJ, Dustin Johnson.
Yeah, when he gets hot and everybody thinks he's unstoppable. If he's close against some no-name, there used to be a couple of those European guys, or I don't remember the guy's name. There was like a fat Latino golfer who was really, really good.
Oh, Angel Cabrera, who won.
Yeah. Those are the guys I like.
He's won majors. He won the Masters.
Fat, ugly Latino golfers. I'll bet those guys when they're going up against Gretzky's kid any day because I'm just going to get value on the line. But other than that, I don't know golf, and I'm not touching it.
That's some serious handicapping.
Well,
the fat, ugly Latino golfers. Oh my God,
that's my niche.
This could go viral pretty quickly. And I'm trusting. I'm not defending you. You just put that out on your own, and obviously, I can't stop laughing about it. One quick thing, we didn't plan on talking about it. For those who haven't tuned in before. Or who don't know me, I'm a big tennis fan. I play the sport regularly, watch a lot of the sport, and great tournament going on. Actually, there's 2 Chapeaus in the semis in Dubai. I actually didn't look at that line this morning, but Acapulco, there's 3 tournaments going on this week, 2 500 level and 1 250. I don't have time to explain that. Tennis fans will know what I'm talking about. But the draw in Acapulco was top notch. 5 of the top 6 guys there. And so the semis go tonight in Acapulco. Rematch of that incredible Australian Open final tonight, Harley. Medvedev, who will be the number 1 player in the world after this tournament because of Djokovic's loss in Dubai yesterday, and he didn't get to play the Australian Open. I won't get into why. Medvedev would not be number 1 had Djokovic won like 2 matches at the Australian Open, which likely would have happened. But it's Medvedev and Nadal tonight. And guess what? Nadal's an underdog again. He's plus 120 when I looked before we started the show. And I think there's a little bit of value there. But the better value play, in my opinion, is in the other semi. England's Cam Norrie is a plus 130 dog against Stefano Tsitsipas. And I think Norrie's worth a look there tonight. So you can have a look at that. College hoops. We have not really talked about it at all. If you haven't looked at the calendar lately, it's February 25th, and that means March is just a few days away. And for bettors, certainly right near the top in terms of events is March Madness, and even the conference tournaments leading into it, as many will start next week. And so just first a general question about betting college hoops. Are you one of the guys who likes to bet the power conferences, the big name teams and conferences, or are you looking down that grid at, Marist and, butt fuck you, forgive me. Are you looking at the Patriot League and the MAC, or are you focused more on the big name teams and conferences when you're betting college hoops?
When I bet college hoops, I focus on the big names and the big conferences. I give the guys who go down the board a lot of credit. I have no doubt in my mind that there's people who live in Indiana or other places in the heart of the Midwest or the Southeast where there's 7 or 8 B or C college basketball teams playing in a small conference where these people live and breathe it. And I have no doubt that they can grind out a living because they understand teams and turnovers better than anybody else, definitely better than a guy who's in Costa Rica or Las Vegas trying to make a line. I don't have that kind of dedication. I don't have that kind of geography. I'm in Toronto. There's exactly 0 teams playing in college basketball within 100 miles of where I live. So my edge in college basketball, like in a lot of other sports, tends to be on fading momentum. So when a team like the Kansas Jayhawks look unstoppable and they open up as a 4-point favorite at Kansas State on a Saturday primetime game, and they end up getting bet up to 6 points, I see the value in taking the dog in K-State, and I'll play off of that type of fade the public, inflated team momentum in the right spots. And that's how I approach college basketball.
Now we're coming to the end of the season. And so a lot of this may be a little bit moot because you take a slightly different approach with some exceptions to conference tournaments and March Madness itself. But I'm glad you brought up like Kansas and Kansas State, because if you understand college basketball or you want to educate yourself, there are certain conference and or in-state rivalries where you see really weird results, right? When you agree, like Kansas State may be a crappy team one year, but when they play Kansas, right, they're in the same conference, so they'll play twice a year, right? The games, and Kansas will be generally, they're a blue blood program. They'll generally be a big favorite. But rivalries matter in college basketball, right?
There's no question about the fact that for NC State, when they play North Carolina or when K-State plays Kansas, they're the shitty little brother who that's their Super Bowl 90% of the time. And they will step it up for that game as best they can. And for Kansas or North Carolina, it's just another game on the schedule. So there are definitely good spots. Again, I mean, when you're taking home dogs or dogs in general, you get that advantage. And for sure, in certain rivalry matchups, it plays better. Having said that, the flip side of it is maybe Kansas cares a little more about their rivalry than they do other games on the schedule also.
So do you take a particular approach or do you like to bet the conference tournaments as opposed to March Madness, or you like to focus on the tournament? And I should add that the bigger conference tournaments for a lot of the teams, they're not that important because they're already going to be in the tournament, in the big tournament. But for many of the other conferences, in fact, well more than half of the conferences, they tend to be single bid conferences, right? You win your conference tournament, you're in the big dance. So how do you approach conference tournaments, or you don't?
Handicapping them and their coaching is essential. Obviously, there are teams, and we're going to get into a game I like tonight. I like Nebraska as a big home dog to Iowa. Iowa's a team that is going to make March Madness. They'll probably be slated somewhere between 7 and 10 seed. So from their perspective, what are they playing for in the conference tournament? Winning that conference, the Big Ten, is really, really tough for Iowa. They're probably the 5th best team in that conference. They're going to have a tough road. They're going to have to win as a dog 2 or 3 times. And losing that conference final or losing in the semis versus going out in round 1 or 2 is worth what to them? Maybe they jump to a 6 seed versus an 8 seed. To me, that's not huge. Maybe you're primed for the tournament. Again, a lot of it has to do with you have to analyze every specific coach and every specific coach's mentality. And some of the coaches play hard to win. Kansas, we keep talking about Kansas. Kansas has won a ridiculous number of Big 12 championships. They care about it and they play to win it. North Carolina, on the flip side, has not won as many conference tournaments. They're not as motivated in that thing. They're more focused. They play in a tough ACC, and they're more focused on the big dance and trying to do as well as possible in March Madness. So again, teams are different. Coaches are different. And if you're going to kind of come across proper angles, having a good feel of where the coach is at. The coach is never going to say, I don't give a shit about winning the Big 12 title. But resting players, getting them ready, a lot of it has to do with you sometimes see those games. Remember that game? They had that crazy game in the conference tourneys a few years ago. Syracuse and UConn played like 6 overtimes or something like that. When you have games where guys get burnt out, maybe after that, you're like, enough is enough. We won. But now we got to run it back 2 or 3 more days straight before we travel a bunch. You know what? I'm going to let my guys rest a little more. I'll let the backups play a little bit more. I want to go deep in the actual March Madness tournament. On the flip side, maybe Iowa's coach decides the opposite. What am I going to do? I'm going to get to March Madness. I'm going to be somewhere between a 7 and 10 seed. My team's not great. I'm probably going to lose in round 2 anyway. So what's the big deal to win the 1-round game where if I can win a Big Ten championship, I got that on my resume. So the thinking can go both ways, and you really got to analyze where the coach and the team's mentality is before you start betting big bucks on stuff like this.
And the place to get that information primarily for college hoops is go to the local market, right? Read the local papers, read the information that's out there from the guys that cover the team on a daily basis. I think that's crucial. And it's not only the coach's mentality and historically how they may approach the conference tournament, especially if they don't need to win the tournament to get in or have a very good showing to get into the tournament. And the other angle with that is injuries, right? Injuries to key players. And I'm not talking about an injury that's going to keep a guy out. I'm talking about, a nagging injury, something that's been plaguing one or two of their key players. And so they may not see the floor a whole lot in the conference tournament, if at all. So my recommendation, and I'm basically parroting to a certain extent what Harley's saying, is do your research in terms of the coaches, injuries, as I'm adding, look at the local market coverage. That's where you're going to glean the most information that's going to help you in terms of making your bets.
Well, you can do even better than that in college. You can read the local college newspapers. So, for example, Northwestern's journalism program. I'd much rather read what a 21-year-old kid from Northwestern's journalism program has to say than somebody that's trying to grind out a living writing for the local papers in the Chicago area. You're going to get a much smarter, more insightful perspective. And yeah, you definitely have that in college. Going to tonight's game, Nebraska's a 12-point home dog. They're horrible. Iowa, like I said, is a tournament-bound team at 19-8. They're above 500 in the Big Ten. Nebraska's only won 1 game in the Big Ten. Iowa is tournament ready. They got a superstar in Keegan Murray who may win Big Ten Player of the Year. He's averaging like a third of their total points. But they're a double-digit road favorite. And I love double-digit home dogs. Nebraska's a 12-point home dog in this game. The line's just a little bit too high. The value is usually going to be on these double-digit home dogs. And I would take a shot tonight on Nebraska plus 12.
All right. The Cornhuskers for Harley tonight in a Big Ten college hoops matchup. And, of course, as we get closer to March Madness, we actually may, right? We've talked about leading into the tournament, doing a podcast on the Monday or Tuesday leading into the tournament, because on Friday, right, we'll already have had 1 day of games take place on the Thursday, right? So we're still looking at doing that.
What I suggest we do is, instead of the Friday before and the Friday during March Madness, we run a double on the Tuesday in between, a double 2-hour episode with guests. We fill out brackets. We talk about some point spread and money line and futures bets. The Tuesday of March Madness, right before it, we'll have the lines for the games out. We'll have some time to do some analysis, and that'll lead into the tournament on Thursday. But we need to discuss the Wednesday. The day before March Madness is the most popular day of the year for what, Jorey? Do you know?
Filling out your bracket?
And what else? One other activity.
The Wednesday before March Madness. I don't know. You got me stumped.
Vasectomies. It's and you can Google this.
Seriously? You expected me to know that?
Well, men of your age are in that sweet spot.
I'm not getting into my own status, Harley, if that's what
I'm
you're asking.
I'm not asking you what your status is, Jorey, but I'm sure you know a bunch of guys that have gotten vasectomies.
Yes,
and the most popular day of the year to do it is the day before March Madness. Why?
And I gotcha. Yeah, why is obvious, because I want to be on my couch for the next 2 weekends.
Correct. You got to chill on your couch with a big box of ice on your balls for 4 days. And what better way to do it than when 48 games are on TV?
Oh, I can't. Where did you find that?
When you spend 6-8 hours a day doing research on sports and Googling shit,
Harley,
you learn it. But this is a Googleable fact.
All right. I'll take your word for it and look it up later. To wrap up the show, we like to do our gambling story of the week. We actually have a couple this week.
Mm-hmm.
We'll try and, I don't want to race through them, but one of them caught my eye. One of them caught your eye. We're always keeping our eyes open for gambling stories that are relatable to what we talk about each and every week. One that caught my eye early in the week was a story on Pro Football Talk. Mike Florio. You see him on Sunday Night Football on NBC. He's like the information guy. Mm-hmm. He's writing all the time. So he wrote a story this week, and the headline was, "When will the Dolphins, NFL face a class action lawsuit from gamblers who illegally bet on the Miami Dolphins in 2019?" And the gist of the story, for those who don't know, is, about 3 weeks ago, former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores sued the league and 3 of the teams for racial discrimination in the hiring, compensation, and retention of Black coaches. Well, as I think that the story actually came out just before the lawsuit, but Flores alleges that during the 2019 season, that Dolphins owner Stephen Ross actually offered him $100,000 a game to lose. And if you go back and look at how that season played out, right, I'm pretty sure they started 0-6 and were getting drilled every week. Like, I think they were also 0-6 against the spread at the time. And they actually started 0-7. And from there, they went 5-4. Flores made it clear that he turned down the money, but addressed this from a gambling perspective. Could there actually be a class action lawsuit filed on behalf of gamblers who bet, obviously, on the Dolphins and lost their money when they might have been throwing games, so to speak?
It's already happening. Medina Spirit, who won the Kentucky Derby,
well, that was the other story. Yeah,
was disqualified, and Mandaloon, the runner-up, was deemed the winner. Now what? You don't think the Mandaloon bettors want to be paid for the winnings? Will Negzer is the lawyer leading the class action. He found 19 plaintiffs, presumably guys with online accounts and documentation on bets on Mandaloon. What are the sports books going to do? I don't know. How far back do you go? Ben Johnson lost his gold medal after 3 days. Do the sports books go back that far? Traditionally, the results are official and they're done. Louisville in college hoops had to vacate their 2013 national title 5 years later. Do you do something about that? What if the Astros World Series cheating caused them to lose their title? Do the Dodgers and Kershaw get to win it, and does a future get paid? It's definitely something the leagues might want to address in the sports books, but generally speaking, results go final and results go final. The Dolphins situation is a little more problematic when you have a team intentionally trying to lose or admitting they're trying to lose, and the NFL is doing their best to cover this up as quickly as possible, but it's definitely problematic from a gambling perspective.
Do you think there is a lawyer out there? Because we know how litigious society is in North America, in particular the U.S., which is the most litigious. Do you think a lawyer might try and take on the NFL and the Dolphins in this case?
100%. If I was a lawyer and I was young and early on in my career and I was in the U.S., why wouldn't I do it just for the name? A lot of writers will pick it up and books will pick it up, and you can make a name for yourself, and you can try to sue the NFL class action for it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah, I agree. I think somebody's going to take a stab at it, and I don't know if they actually have a good chance of winning, because trying to prove that is going to be awfully difficult. You're the lawyer, at least the law degree, but I don't want to get too caught up in it. But it is something that caught my eye, something that we will watch and potentially talk about if, in fact, a lawsuit like this comes up. And another story that we had talked about, and I'm not going to go deep into the weeds in it, but man, oh man, sports betting is bringing more and more attention on a daily basis to, in particular, the NBA stats, right? We talked about how a couple where they had to correct because of the popularity of player props nowadays. And again, there was a story this week that it's sports bettors that are pushing these leagues to really pay super close attention to every single statistic out of an NBA game, and similarly in the other sports. And they should all be doing this, right? We can't hammer that home enough, that the leagues have to be on top of it, because now it truly is. It's not just dollar and cents for players and their contracts. It's dollars and cents for their consumers.
Correct. So I got two takes on this. For starters, shame on the NBA for pretending there are less corrections now than usual. Of course, there are more corrections because fans, teams, monitors like Sport Radar, and Jorey, we should discuss Sport Radar in depth next week.
Okay.
The people on it, and that's important.
I'm writing that down. Sport Radar.
In the past, who cared if Levine got an assist credited to DeRozan in the second quarter of a 20-point blowout, except maybe Levine, DeRozan, or their agents and a couple of fantasy geeks in their basement who likely couldn't even track it and watch everything unless they had a VHS on tape. Now bettors watch, replay, and care, which leads to point two. The NBA and sportsbooks are learning a valuable lesson, and that is that bettors are losers and think they are conspiracies against them, bad luck, etc. Nobody who wins because DeRozan got credited with an extra assist will consider themselves lucky. At best, they'll think they were given their due for some random misfortune in the past. But you can bet your ass that the bettors screwed by Levine will cry to everyone who will listen. So the only answer is to pay both sides until the NBA figures out how to score correctly, get results in a timely manner, and gets it right. Again, the NBA gets the fees. Sportsbooks make profit. Figure out how to split it while not burning consumers, or you do it at your peril. Your peril is bettors and fans being annoyed and turned off, and they are the paying customers. And since they spend their money that they barely have on your overpriced product, you better value them, because movie theaters, restaurants, strip joints, and vacation packages want their money also. The NBA and the sportsbooks have to get together, figure out the solution, or pay both sides every single time they screw up.
Amen. Couldn't agree more. And the other bit of advice we'd like to give is is if you're considering getting a vasectomy, make sure you do it a couple days before the beginning of March Madness if it's something you enjoy watching and have an absolute ironclad reason to not leave your couch for 2 consecutive weekends of Thursday to Sunday March Madness action. That's definitely my highlight from this week's program, Harley. And so before we bid you adieu, we will remind you, please send us your questions, comments, picks. Anything is fair game, clearly, after some of the subject matter on today's show. Email questions at theparleh.com. The Parleh is spelled Parleh. If you don't get the play on words, sorry, can't help you. You can also hit us up on Twitter at Jorey Middle, Jorey, Jorey. I'll spot you the middle. And Harley is at Sharp Edge Picks. Check out theparleh.com. Check out social media. We're all over it. And certainly the podcast is shared everywhere. And Harley doing videos for the Parleh, and the Parleh putting out great content and tons of it on a daily basis. So please check it out. Also rate, subscribe, do all that fun stuff as well for our podcast. And so, as we say on the way out, for Harley, I'm Jorey. May all your picks be winners. Ours too. It's been a pleasure presenting the Parleh Sports Betting Show each and every week on Canada's Sports Betting Network, The Parleh. Enjoy. We'll talk to you next week.